be okay with rejection. If someone doesn't respond the way you want them to respond, it's okay. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But keep putting in the effort and keep an open heart.
Yeah. I think that's like such a good point to make too, is I think, and I think it maybe gets easier when you get a little bit older, like stop caring about what other people think.
I love that.
Like stop caring. Seriously, who cares? Like if you have to find like things that make you feel good about yourself.
Welcome to the Love Atlas. I'm your host, Sunana Sharma, and today I have Nicki. And Nicki and I are going to discuss the dating world, especially when it comes to moving from a different state and starting from scratch. So Nicki's going to tell us a lot about her experience, especially moving from Minneapolis to California and meeting various people and also making new friends, because it can be challenging. So Nicki, tell us a little bit about your experience from moving and shifting from Minneapolis to California.
Moving to a new place, people tell you like you need to give it time and it'll be difficult and you'll feel really lonely. Fortunately for me, I kind of made friends like right away. Like I made friends with the people that I lived with. I met people at work. And yeah, I wasn't really concerned with dating at that point. I was just kind of trying to just kind of like navigate being in a new area and meeting people. And of course, dating was on my mind, but it wasn't really like my priority, I guess you could say.
I would love to know a little bit about more of your experience when it comes to dating in Los Angeles specifically. Like, how has that been for you? I'm sure there's like ups and downs. And we talk about it all the time. So a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, dating's difficult these days. I mean, I think anyone who's in the dating world, especially in your mid-30s, will tell you the same thing, that it's just like not ideal. And I think for me, I just kind of came up like I had to, at first it was really upsetting, honestly, because I mean, a girl in her mid-30s who wants to have a family one day, it's on the back of your mind of like, when am I going to find my person? And like, I want to have a family one day. And so it's a little bit stressful. And I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and almost come off like desperate in ways, because in a way you kind of are a little bit desperate.
Right, and I think especially for women, because there's so much pressure on us to have babies at a certain age. So that can be a bit challenging, because you're constantly, like, as you mentioned, when you're single, it's on your mind. And when you're going on these dates, you're like, oh, is he my person? Is he my person? And if it doesn't happen, then you're like, shoot, again? Like, I'm going through the same cycle.
Yeah, exactly. And so I kind of took a different approach to it and just decided, like, look, like, I'm just going to date for fun and like try and not think of it or not put any pressure on the situation. Just go into it with an open heart. I think one thing that's really important when you're going on a date is, again, to not go into it with an expectation, and to just know that you're going to hang out with another person. Like you can always find something if you just open like your heart and you just open your mind to it as being just more of like a hangout. You're getting to know this person. It can actually be like a really beautiful thing. Like, for instance, I mean, a couple of times I've gone and met up with a guy and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like never gonna work. But we have like this time together, and rather sitting there and like rolling my eyes and being like, hey, when is this over? I think I just spend the time like finding that one little connection that we may have, and just going with that, so that it's a good time for you, it's a good time for them. They don't feel weird about, or like they're not catching any negative energy from you, and you're just really enjoying your time, I guess. And then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
And then I know, as you mentioned, dating in general it can be challenging, especially when it comes to your mid-30s. But how has Los Angeles specifically, like living out in LA, I mean, I know you're in the Oxnard area, but how has that been for you? Like, are you happy being here and experiencing the dating scene, or are you like, okay, you know what, I'm over the scene?
I think I don't really know a lot, because like when I was in Monterey, I wasn't dating. I would say it's different from Minneapolis. I feel like men in Minneapolis, and I wasn't putting a ton of effort into dating there. I did meet one guy that I was with for a little while. He just wasn't my person. in the Midwest tends to be a little bit more family oriented, ready to settle down. I think in this area, it's so populated, so it's kind of like, I mean, you can go on dates with people, but I feel like I have a little bit of a difficult time with trusting people, I think, around here. I always tend to trust people unless, like, they've given me or like, they've wronged me in a way. And if and when they did, it always kind of came to light. Maybe it's just because my guard is up. I just kind of, like, constantly think that people aren't, like, not even necessarily, like, lying, or I guess a good way to put it is just I have my guard up a little bit.
And then you have your guard up because you've come across certain kind of people. And you've been deceived by certain people. And that's the main reason why your guard even goes up, right? Because if you've had only great experiences, then you're going to be like, oh, everyone's amazing. So it's like, obviously that pain or that heartbreak that you go through, it makes you start questioning who you are and, like, the people that you're attracting.
Absolutely. So I've been in situations where, like, oh, this guy is great, and then something happens, I'm like, well, that was a little weird, and then all of a sudden, like, it was weird. And I almost thought that, like, oh no, he's just, like, a nice guy going through something, and then things, like, came to light, and I was like, oh my gosh, no, I've been, like, extremely deceived. So maybe there's that. And
and then I would say, so what do you do in order to start trusting people, right? Because at the end of the day, when you're going into dates, you do have to take what people say for like value. Whatever comes out of their mouth, you do have to kind of, like, believe them. So if you have been deceived and you have been broken to a certain extent, how do you try to, like, separate that?
What I've done is I just start listening to the person, and if somebody's being deceitful, I've met enough people, and, like, I've learned a lot about a number of different people that I will get kind of an intuitive feeling if I think I'm being deceived or lied to, or I catch on. And one thing about me, I guess, is, like, I'm a listener, so I just catch on to, like, things people are saying. I've caught guys in lies, and I will never, like, call them out on it. I just kind of, like, put it in my back pocket and be like, okay, like, why were they lying? Was this, like, an anxious thing? Is this a pattern? Are they, like, nervous around me? Because, like, the dating world can be really nerve-wracking because we're, like, so worried about if the person sitting next to, like, what they think of us, when really like, it should be this, like, authentic thing, like, come as yourself and express yourself. So I try and kind of, like, figure out, is this person lying to me? And I do truly believe that if somebody is lying to you and deceiving you, it will come to light. I think at this point in my life, I don't, like, want to give my time to that. So as soon as I get that feeling, I'm pretty quick to check out of it, or even ask them about it. And, like,
I think just being, like, real and just asking them, like, what do you mean by that? Or, like, especially if you find someone lying, like, I think the way you question them matters a lot. If you come at them with an attack, then obviously they'll, like, get defensive. But yeah, that's really interesting, and I do resonate with you because I've had similar experiences to you as well, where I've come across people who have been deceitful, and I think a lot of women would relate to that because women or men coming across, like, someone who is not being honest with them, and I think it's challenging to start seeing the good in people again, especially when you're going through these experiences, because you have these judgments then, and you have your own personal experiences, so you're like, oh, like this person's bullshitting, or, like, you know, and how do you even separate that? Because what if, due to your experience, you're judging the person wrong as well, where you meet someone right off the bat and you're like, oh, this person's a liar, but what if they're actually really honest? So I think it's, like, really knowing yourself, and as you mentioned, being intuitive, because how you vibe with someone and how you question them and learn about them, as you mentioned, being a good listener is so important. It's crucial, especially not just in the dating world, but also when you're in a relationship and a marriage commitment, like, down the road as well. So what do you seek for in a partnership?
What do I seek? I think that's probably changed over the years. I think I always immediately went for chemistry, and it just led me like down a straight path. And classically, I think for me, I was dating people who I felt like I was ignoring certain things that were non-negotiables, thinking that these things could be fixed. And I think at this point in my life, what I'm looking for is just somebody who's, I guess, like a provider in a way where like I don't necessarily have to like, this is going to come off wrong, but like worry about like finance, like they're successful, and somebody who can provide. And my reasoning for that would be like, I've always wanted to have children, and I want to be able to spend time with children. And I think that stems from my mom being a workaholic and me having to like, I lost that like time with my mother. And I think that time is really important for a child to have. Now I'm like, so I think someone who can provide, someone who is like, doesn't cheat, doesn't lie. Like, I don't want this like question, someone who makes you feel a little bit more just like safe.
Right.
You know, like I've had so many, and I can't say that in any of my relationships I didn't feel safe. And then I've still been, people have made me feel safe and then cheated, whether it was like an accident or not or whatnot. But I think someone should make you feel safe from the get-go. And I think this like world of dating and a little bit like around LA, it's almost like you have too many options. Like it's so populated. There's so many options. You're always looking for something a little bit better. You're not giving people a chance because you're like, well, what if something better comes along?
Right. I think you're right. Like, as you mentioned, like someone who provides, and a lot of people can take that in a negative way. But at the same time, if you're a successful woman yourself and you're a physical therapist and you have your, you know, you have a good head on your shoulder and you're working really hard Monday through Friday and you're making your money and you're very self-sufficient and independent, I think it's very normal to want a partner who is also as successful as you are, or if not even more successful, so you can admire that person and look up to that person. Because the truth is, like I know a lot of feminists, like women, like would deny, like they can be a little extreme sometimes and say like, oh, like women should be as equal. But the truth is we're not. Biologically, we're not equal, and we need to be able to, eventually when you get married, you have kids, like your lifestyle changes completely. So you do need that support system. Like one person does have to bring in the money, if not two people. But there needs to be some sort of a communication between both partners to decide what they want from this relationship. And if you want a family, it's not easy, especially for a woman who's raising kids and trying to have a family and trying to work. Like there's a lot of things that you have to juggle. So I just feel like there's a lot of emphasis on, a lot of women feel guilty thinking like, oh, if I'm not working and if my husband's working and I'm taking care of the kids, like there's that guilt. But there should not be any guilt because you're still a stay-at-home mom which is such a tough job. Like there needs to be some sort of a reward for these women because it's a lot of work to be a stay-at-home mom. And I know that because, I mean, I'm not a stay-at-home mom. I don't have kids, but I have friends who are stay-at-home moms and they're working their butt off. Like they're teaching their kids. Some of them are homeschooling their kids. Some of them are just taking care of their kids and raising them so well. So I think just recognizing that there should be no guilt. How has your experience been when it comes to, like, aside from dating, friendships as well? Because I know we connected and then you met someone else as well. So how did you manifest that into your life?
Yes, great question.
Because I knew you were about to leave. You were like, I'm out of here. Peace out to
I was
LA.
like, I'm done, ready to go, get me out of here. So I think I just kind of told myself, like, okay, you have to be willing to put yourself in like some uncomfortable situations, not even necessarily uncomfortable, but be open to trying new things that might lead to you meeting someone. So I think, like, I'm not a CrossFit girl. Like, I like a good, healthy athletic competition. Those people are a different breed. But I went to a CrossFit gym and I was like, okay. And I remember going into the office because they do the whole little welcome thing to get you to sign on or whatever. And she basically, I just kind of walked in and I was like, look, I'm like strictly here to meet friends.
Yeah.
If I'm off in the corner doing my own thing, like let it be.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and they weren't really my people, which was great. Everyone was super nice, but just not necessarily my people. But just activities like that, and then just kind of like be willing to like go places by yourself. Like it's pretty wild how like I was actually pretty shocked. I've never been in a place like, I mean, just LA in general where I've had like so many people just kind of like start to talk to me. And I think maybe the reason that is I just like would go out by myself or do things and just like kind of like open my heart to like receiving, I guess, to like receiving conversation or whatever. So like whether it be like in an airport or sitting at a bar and you're talking to the bartender, you just, again, just like I said with dating, finding that common ground with someone, it's easy to do like once you've done it, but you just really have to put yourself out there. And if it just ends up being you sitting there by yourself, like who cares? Enjoy the time with yourself. Like it's actually like so liberating, like taking yourself on a date and just hanging out with yourself. You just honestly, there's like no better feeling.
No, that's great. And like for someone who has never done that before and who is very anxious and scared to do that, right? Because we've all been there, going to maybe, I mean, when I think back, like I always used to have friends going to places with me, and you know, like if I'm working at a cafe by myself, like that's fine because you have your headphones on and you're working. But actually like going to a dinner and treating yourself and going to a place like that, like if someone has never experienced that, like what advice do you have for them?
Okay, well, I would say sit at the bar, because at least you're usually talking to the bartender and people there are like more willing to chat. You don't even have to have a drink, like order like if you don't like to drink, like coffee, a mocktail, anything. And sometimes people will just come around, but then too, don't be upset if and when it doesn't happen, because that time with yourself is like so valuable. I would say try to like not be on your phone the whole time. Sometimes people are like, oh, they're not really approachable. Sometimes they don't care and they'll just like talk to you. But I think a good, like one thing I started practicing is just kind of like, I learned about it in a book, and like I don't even know what book it was. I wish I did, but just like even like going on a walk and like walking past a person and just like really just, it sounds weird, but like open your heart to them.
And
like
smile.
Just kind of like smile at them. Open, if you don't get it back, fine, whatever. It's not you, it's them. Like just open your heart. And I really started like practicing that, or like walking by and just like noticing like all the beauty around you, not being so consumed by these like anxious thoughts that you have. But yeah, if you just start opening up, great. And you know, like typically, like I'm not the one who's had to start a conversation, so I could see that being a little bit more difficult to like spark that conversation with someone. But I don't know, a lot of times around here, you're not the only one sitting at the bar like by yourself. You're really not.
And I like the advice that you gave, because basically like ultimately it's being in the present moment instead of like constantly looking at your phone. Even if you're sitting at a bar or you're walking, notice the beauty around you, like see the person in front of you, and be okay with rejection. If someone doesn't respond the way you want them to respond, it's okay, it's not a big deal. But keep putting in the effort and keep an open heart.
I think that's like such a good point to make too, is I think and I think it maybe gets easier when you get a little bit older. Like, stop caring about what other people think.
I love that.
Like, stop caring. Seriously, who cares? Like, if you have to find like things that make you feel good about yourself, and to help build that confidence, especially if you tend to be a little bit more like reserved or a little bit more. I mean, I was definitely a little bit more reserved and anxious. I mean, I'm still anxious now, but just like scared to put myself out there. I guess it would say like my self-esteem was really low, and you just have to like find these things that make you feel good. So even like, don't even bring other people into the equation. Like, what's gonna like make you feel good? Like, is it this class you take? I have like one of my good friends, she takes pole dancing classes, like not only as like a workout, but I think that's like a popular thing now, though. People do that, and it's just a way for them to like let go and feel free and feel sexy, and nobody there is judging you, and just kind of get yourself a little bit uncomfortable for a little bit, and then just kind of own it. And
like stepping out of your comfort zone and trying something different. It's so funny that you mentioned that, because I remember I walked into a yoga class one time, and this yoga class was like very like sensual, and like everyone was dancing, and I felt very uncomfortable like doing the moves, and I was just kind of like I'm not gonna do that, you know? But then eventually like you see the yoga instructor just like so focused on like himself or herself, and I'm like, they're just moving their bodies in the ways that they want to the music. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually very therapeutic to be able to let go and move your body and do the things that you enjoy doing in the movements that you want to make, because we all have those kind of movements. It's about freeing ourselves, because we are very restricted. We're always constantly thinking like, oh my goodness, like I'm gonna look weird, or do I feel uncomfortable? I mean, and again, different cultures where like your upbringing matters a lot as well, because for me, like growing up, I wasn't able to like fully express myself, and now I'm starting to express myself. So I'm like, okay, I genuinely don't care what people think about me as much as I used to. So that's also progress, right? Like it's still there. I still care to a certain extent. And maybe that might not ever go away. But like I am getting better and better.
So just be comfortable with getting a little bit uncomfortable, and just open your heart to people, and the people around you, and the people that are like also that way will kind of approach and make their way to you.
Definitely. And I think like people who are meant to be in your life, they will somehow just pop up. And even when it comes to friendships, like even if you've lost certain friendships, like some people might come back into your life, or some people might just disappear forever too. And they were just there for a season. So tell me a little bit about your friendships. Like, how is it? Because I know being 35 years old, both of us are 35 now. Woo! You're turning 36 soon, right?
No.
So being in your mid-30s, it can be a bit challenging, especially being single, and a lot of your friends are married, having kids, or getting engaged. So how is that? Because I know you're such a well-wisher, and you love all your friends, and you want the best for them, and you're such a positive person, but then that void that you have within yourself, because you're still seeking a partner. How does that make you feel?
I think now, like within the past like couple years, I've been able to like set aside just like feeling sorry for myself, I guess, for still being on like my journey to finding my person. I think it took a little bit. My last long-term relationship, it took a while to get over and to not be angry, but I think I needed to go through that process to like get to a point of like being happy and realizing that like life doesn't go as planned. You can't just like control everything. And I mean, there was definitely a time where I was just like, why isn't this happening for me? Why isn't it happening for me? But, and it's not that you're never not happy for people. Like the people around me that were like getting married, having babies, like I was happy for them, but you also at the same time have this like little bit of like almost like envy in a way, and it doesn't like feel good to feel that way either, and you know it doesn't feel good, and you can acknowledge that it doesn't feel good, but it still is just like there, and it'll come in waves too. Like you'll go through like a difficult month, like the holiday season. We just got through the holiday season. It tends to be a little bit more of a difficult month for me.
And I think it's so interesting, because the reason why sometimes you feel that envy is also because you care, right? You care about your friendships, you care about the people where, you know, your friends are moving on in their lives, and you care about them, but at the same time, you also have this feeling within you where you're like, oh, when is it going to happen with me? Which is very normal.
Yeah. I guess it's just like I kind of check in and out of those moments. I'd say it happens a lot less now than it did, but I think it's okay. And I think it's okay to like grieve and be sad, but then it's kind of like, okay, let's like move on, and also kind of trying to focus on like the freedom that you do have, like being single and being able to do whatever you want. And
it's interesting that you're mentioning all of these things, because to me, I'm thinking about my single life and how if I can go back in time, I'd want to appreciate the single life even more.
Yeah.
Because I think at that time frame, I was so focused on finding the right partner that I missed out a little bit on the present moment.
Yeah.
Because I was so focused on like, oh, like when am I going to find my future husband? Because that's what we're taught watching all these like lovey-dovey movies. It's like, oh, when am I going to get married? Or when am I going to have, I mean, I never thought so much about kids, but more than that, I thought a lot about finding my significant other. And I think as much as I enjoyed being single and as much as I enjoyed like hanging out with my friends, I obviously have amazing memories, but I think in back of my mind, whenever I would go to places, I would think like, oh, what if he's here? What if he's around me? Like, and it's definitely a good feeling to a certain extent, but then when I think back, I also think about like, okay, why did I care so much about it? Why didn't I just live and enjoy my single life authentically without worrying so much about it, right? But the truth is that a lot of us worry about it because as we're getting older and you start seeing that your environment, everyone around you getting married and proposed to or having kids, it's bound to affect you.
Yeah. No, it certainly can. Like even like 3-4 years ago, I had like a lot of envy, not because I wasn't happy, I was just sad with where I was at.
Right.
So I think now when things like that happen, I actually have this like true, genuine happiness. And it's not that it wasn't true, genuine happiness then, but it's like happiness without the envy.
Right.
And like it will like wave a little bit, but I think much more now.
And I think that's important too, because that's a big part of you that has the self-awareness to understand and recognize, okay, I love my friends or I love the people around me and I'm happy for them. Just because I am not on the same phase as them at this point in my life, I still genuinely feel good for them.
Yes,
right?
Yeah. And I think it took like a little bit for me to get there, but like you do, and it actually feels good. It feels way better to be like happy for people than it does to like be envious. So like,
I agree.
It's
and some
like
people
you get
never
it
get there,
because you
sadly.
can share it.
And some people, you know, will be very envious and jealous of others and seeing their posts and things like that. And I think like it takes a big person to be happy and content within yourself.
Yeah.
If you had one advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Oh gosh, don't date. Don't get in. I don't mean don't date, but like don't. I think I always found myself. I am really quick to develop an emotional attachment to someone. I think I learned that about myself as I got a little bit older, and so I wasn't seeking like compatibility. I was seeking complete like chemistry, and that's fun and whatever, but then I would end up in these like 2, 3, 4-year relationships that I look back on, I'm like, gosh, I really wish I would have just like spent that time like having a little more fun, dating, figuring out what it is that I want. And I mean, I did get there. I finally get there, and I feel like now
you're in a good place.
I know what it is that I want or what I'm looking for. I know how to not waste time, and I know how to there's a difference between pet peeves and non-negotiables, and I think I have and those will like ebb and flow a little bit, but having those non-negotiables like set into place and just know, and not like wiggling from there unless you truly are changing your mind on it.
So I think emotional attachment is so big for everyone. Even for me, I would say that was a big one as well, because for me, more than anything, it was challenging in friendships, because I would get so emotionally involved when I was younger with certain friends without even knowing them that well. You're like, is that us?
It's like, wait a minute.
Just without knowing them, I would say more than anything, it was like I had this emotional attachment and I would think that they're honest beings, and,
Yeah.
and that they have my back,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then fast forward, I would find out that they were very different with other people, and that I got to know them one-on-one, and they were great people one-on-one, but anytime there was a group setting involved, or if there was the opposite sex involved, there would be a lot of issues. And I would think to myself, like, why, like, is it me, or like what's going on? But then I realized later on that it was their own self-esteem and insecurity and issues around men. So they always wanted to one-up me or be in those kind of settings.
Yeah.
Right? So then I realized, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, why am I constantly attracting these kind of people around me? But then I also realized deep down inside, I always wanted loyalty, and I always wanted to be, because I'm such a loyal person with my friends and in a relationship, I expected that. But then I realized over the years, not everyone's like you, and not everyone is as loyal as you at times either. So it's like, it takes time to find the right crowd.
Yeah.
And I think now, being 35 years old, I'm like, okay, this is the person I want in my life, this is the person I don't want in my life, or this is the person I'm going to keep distance. And I've learned to just keep distance and keep it cool now. Before, when I was younger, I would be like dropping people left and right. I would realize, like, oh, this is not the right person for me, boom, drop them. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't do that. You can't burn bridges either.
Yeah.
So you learn over the years, and you also, and I think also understanding that not everything is black and white. You don't need to be best friends with everyone.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
don't need to, like, you know, not talk to anyone. Like, it's like there has to be that middle ground where you can be cordial with people, and that's okay. And I think that was the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. I think fortunately I didn't really run into that a whole lot with girls. Like, I was pretty quick to, I mean, if like a girl was mean, I just kind of like distanced myself a little bit. But I mean, we all go through that weird phase as females of just like trying to fit in with everyone. And then
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a people pleaser, but much better at like standing up for myself now, and not in a way where I'm like mean or rude. I just like, I have much better boundaries like with people, and then just like who I let into my life. Fortunately, I didn't deal with a ton of like cattiness on the girl side.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I have amazing friends.
Yeah, same here. I have amazing people in my life at this point in my life, but I think like just understanding, and also, as you mentioned, people pleasing, because I think for me, I was always letting people in and then doubting myself. Always having that self-doubt where it's like, oh, maybe it's me, it's not them, and constantly blaming myself. And then I think you realize eventually, once you have that confidence within yourself, and once your self-esteem is higher, you realize, okay, you know what, these are my values, and either you meet someone on the same level, and if you don't, then it's okay. It's not a big deal, right? And as you mentioned earlier, not caring so much about what people think.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing.
It's such a hard pill to swallow too, because it's like we inherently do care what people think. We just do. It's just to the extent that it affects like some of us more than others. And I think for like a very long time, I always cared like so much what people thought. Like, I mean, when I was like a little girl, like it wasn't cool to be smart. Like you weren't like with like the popular girls, like if you were smart. And then and now I'm like, and it's funny because then you look at like people who you consider like really smart or intelligent, and you're like, oh my gosh, wow, it becomes impressive. But we spend our younger years just trying to fit into the crowd and not like letting like your light shine. And
totally.
And it just, I mean, you get there. But yeah.
Amazing. Well, Nicki here, and again, she's taking clients for her physical therapy business. So please hit her up. She's great. She's helping me with my arm as well. So, you know, got hurt not so long ago. Love you.